Hello, I'm your FPS coach, Rambo Kim, and in this video, I'm excited to share with you a custom training task that I created to help with your pivot point aiming or your anchoring skills. It's a fundamental skill that I think you should have regardless of your skill level or any FPS game you play. If you train on this task, I promise you it'll help you be more consistent. It'll even help you find and optimize your sensitivity and just become more accurate and land more headshots. So with no further ado, let me go ahead and open up Aimlabs and I'll show you how to access it and walk you through how exactly you need to train on this task. So after you open up Aimlabs, go to custom up here in the top menu and then workshop, and then under scenarios here we're going to search for pivot point training and we'll see the task pivot point training right here. So there's 4 different training modes as I mentioned in each 4 corners, and you'll see that there's numbers on the wall and that indicates the distances, so you can train how far you are from the wall by determining the distance of the lines here. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just figure out what is our max sensitivity range when we bend our wrists to the left and right. So for example, if I center myself here on number 8 with this line and center with this middle dot, I want to shoot this middle dot, and well, before even shooting it, just see how far you can move the crosshair. When you are centered here with this middle point, your wrist is in a neutral position, and if you bend your wrist to the max right and then center yourself neutral position and then bend your wrist to the left, you'll see how far your crosshair moves. So for my sensitivity, you could see that I'm actually a little bit outside of these lines, so I want to back up just a little bit here. And now I want to make sure that when I bend my wrist to the left and right, it's going to exactly hit these sidelines on this area. So as you can see here, I have 9 to 910. And just to show you my settings real quick, I have it set under CSGO, so Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I have 400 DPI at 0.75 sensitivity, just so you know what I'm working with. And now, so for me, if I want to practice pivoting from this middle point, right? So if you look at the camera, what I'm doing is just bending my wrist to the left and right. And I'm just pivoting. I'm not moving my wrists, right? So this is just, there's 2 ways to practice this task. There's one with the wrist and one with the forearm, and I'll show you here in a second. So the wrist here is anchored, and I'm just gonna pivot. I'm gonna shoot this middle target, and then you'll see that the target randomly spawns somewhere to the left and right. And one way I want you to practice this is that when you shoot the target, then react and shoot the target. So what I was doing a little bit earlier, I was getting ahead of myself where I was shooting and I was moving before I actually visually register which way the target has spawned. So you can see here, clicking the center target, quickly flicking and bending my wrist to the max left and right. Now, one thing I need to warn you about is that you don't want to jam your wrist all the way to the right constantly. Okay, so you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. If you do that, it's definitely going to cause tension in your forearm. So this will help you realize what is the possibility or capability of how far my crosshair moves when I bend to the left and right, but you don't want to be in a distance from the wall where you're jamming, right? And you're going to feel that tension. So give yourself a little bit of space. The way you can do that is just scoot back a little bit. Technically now, if I bend my wrist to the max left, it's going to be overshooting. So I give myself a little bit of room where I'm not creating all this tension. This is a good way to just learn, how far my crosshair moves in the x-axis when I bend my wrist to the left and right. And then you can practice different ranges. So say if you want to go a higher sensitivity, say if I have a super high sensitivity, well, I can bend my wrist a lot further to the left and right. So you can experiment, and this way you always know, okay, if I flick my wrist to left and right, it's always going to aim this much. And then you have kind of this working zone, or you have this kind of cone that you can always aim within accurately. So after we've experimented and gotten really comfortable with our pivoting left and right with our wrist, you can do the same thing with your arm. So what I mean by that is that we're going to anchor and pivot with our forearm touching the table here, as you can see where my forearm intersects. And now we can practice, if you're an arm aimer, you can practice pivoting from this point and using minimal wrist movement. So at first, you should just pretty much practice with a stiff wrist, so no wrist, just practice pivoting with your arm. This is if you're an arm aimer, so I'll show you a few examples. So right now, my wrist is completely locked, and now I'm just pivoting off the anchor point from the forearm in the on the table. Now after we've gotten comfortable with that and we've figured out if we have a left side weakness or right side weakness, any adjustments you may need to make with maybe your forearm position and anchor point. Now we move on to this area where we're going to reinforce aiming within all our working zone or our cone here. Okay, so before I was at a 9.5 to 10, and that was my max wrist bend, remember? So what we're going to do now is just practice aiming within the working zone. So same concept before. What I want you to do is shoot the target. When you see the next one spawn, then you react and flick. So I don't want you to shoot and then preemptively move your crosshair. So what we're doing here is just making these quick little snappy flicks, and we're practicing getting used to how to aim within our max pivot area. Okay, same concept here. Now you want to move to your arm if you're more of an arm aimer. And then we're going to move on to the XY axis section now. So now we've got our pivoting and our left and right X axis. We're going to move on to combining both the vertical and horizontal movement. So we're going to go back to our number here at 9.5, and the left and right is the same distance. So if I bend my wrist to the left and right, it's going to hit the edges. So now this is going to be a lot more difficult because we have to aim in a vertical axis and combine it with the X axis. So anytime you need to aim vertically up or down, you have to move your forearm and your elbow closer and away from your body. So this makes it difficult because this is a natural motion, pivoting left and right, but shifting it up and down, that requires you to there's a lot more movement here and a lot more shifting. Same concept here. What we're gonna do is practice pivoting using our max X axis, but now combining some vertical movement. And now same concept here. There's two ways to do this. You can be more of a wrist aimer. So as you're shifting your forearm to hit these vertical spots, you can bend your wrist to get up there. And then the second way to practice this, same as the other, is just stiff wristing it. So right here, I don't have any wrist motion and I'm just shifting my entire arm. And I would recommend practicing both ways just so you can kind of get a comfort feel and understand what your capabilities are and what's more comfortable for you. All right, so that's the X axis, and now we're gonna move on to the other XY axis. Same concept, we're gonna set up to 9.5. And now the target's gonna spawn within this box here. So just like the other room over there, we're gonna reinforce aiming within our pivot point window or pivot point range. All right, so if you can master this and if you can get really good at pivoting and aiming within this working zone where 90% of your fights are gonna happen, you're gonna be more consistent and you're gonna land more headshots and you're just gonna have more control of your game. Obviously, there are times when you need to aim outside the window, and that comes down to your game of choice and play style. So if you are a entry player where you need to, hard clear crossfires and you have to aim a huge range of window, then obviously you're gonna need higher sense. If you're a sniper or a long distance player who likes to play slow and at distance, then you might be all the way back here at number 15 because your window is smaller. So you need to figure that out for yourself, match your sensitivity with your working zone or your window, and then use this task to help aim within that by learning how to master and aiming from your pivot point. All right, well, that does it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this task and this video was helpful. If you have any questions with your game, leave them in the comments below, and like the video if it was helpful, and subscribe to stay up to date.